Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I'm going to talk about the physical books that I read in February. Same position, apologised for the door, let's just get on with it now. We've got a lot of books to get through, so it's probably best that I start with the one that I've already reviewed, and that is Moriarty by Anthony Horowitz. Didn't care for this book. If you go to my review, you'll see why. I read The Devil's Star by Jo Nesbo. Last month I also read The Devil's Star and, well, I read this book and The Redeemer. And again, really enjoying these books. Again, they're incredibly weird, but they're thrillers and they're a very fast-paced read. They might be nearly 600 pages long each, but you can get, well, I can get through them in about 2 days. They are just that compulsive, and I find them that when I put them down, I'm thinking about them. They're weird, they're all over the place. I've never yet been able to solve just what's happening, apart from with The Redeemer. I kind of figured it out with The Redeemer from something that was said in an early chapter, but I just wasn't sure how it was done. But yeah, if you're looking for a crime series to get into, if you've been wondering about Jo Nesbo, whether you should read him or not, I know you're supposed to say yo, but aren't you, or something. Anyway, doesn't matter. Read it. Next, I read Crudo, and is this Olivia Laing who wrote this book. It's quite a short narrative in which the character keeps referring to herself as Kathy from one of those American comics. There's intertextuality in here, and I suppose if I was at uni we might be describing this book as postmodern. It deals with a lot of issues that we're going through today whilst also bringing it back to a human narrative. I like that it's experimenting with form. I liked the discussion that it was kind of having about the issues we're having the world over, but it just didn't get me right there. It didn't hit me the way that I wanted it to. But that's a shame. But that's what you get into when you get these books. Then I read Apocalypse Next Tuesday. I can't remember who wrote this book. I'd like to forget this book existed. I thought this book was going to be humorous in the way that I found the management style of The Supreme Beings by Tom Holt last year, and it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. In fact, it was a startling disappointment. It had a bad translation, which was just shameful, really. There were sentences that just hadn't been properly edited, so they made no sense, and it wasn't even that, it was just that the story just didn't do anything. It talked about an apocalypse, and by the end of it I was hoping the apocalypse would just hit them all. Then I read My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and Lord, this book was amazing. It's just really quick. Read it in one sitting in the whatever morning it was of this day. A woman is always having to clean up her sister's messes. Her sister just keeps killing the men she fancies, and it just takes a worrying turn when the serial killer sister falls for the love interest of the cleaning sister, and it was just funny. That was it. It was a black comedy, and it was great. And I don't really think that I can say more than that about it. That I just really enjoyed the writing. I liked the way it was done, and whilst I think that it might be a one and done book, I don't know whether I'll go back and read it again. For what it was, for the thrills that it had, for the ways that you knew how it was going to go, and it was fine because it was just funny, and you just felt sorry for the sisters in the end. You felt they just couldn't help it. You couldn't help murdering someone and then covering it up. I don't know. It was one of those books. Next, I read Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Machado, and this is that short story collection everyone loved, and it reminded me of Angela Carter. It was fairy tale, it was fantasy, it was magical realism, it was ghost story. It was just fascinating. It was brilliant about what it was saying about the world for women to live in at the moment, and it had queerness to it, and it was just grand. And I can't talk about these stories individually because I don't have the book, but yeah, it was great, and if you haven't read it yet, I really do recommend finding a copy and getting it down you. Next, I read Shadowblack by Sebastien de Castell, the second book in his Spellslinger series. This is the YA fantasy series that he's writing. Quite a few books of this have come out now. I think there's now 4, with the 5th coming in May. And this Shadowblack was better than Spellslinger for me. I read Spellslinger a couple of years ago, and whilst I enjoyed it, it didn't really wow me. This book didn't wow me either, but it really captured the characters. It felt like an improvement and an advancement on the last book, and you get a sense of how deep the corruption of the higher powers in this world is going. And it also did that thing that I liked with Traitor's Blade, where it focused on one area. You were introduced to a new area and a new part of the magical world and the magic system, and then it focused on that area. It went really quick on there, and then that was where your story was set. And it wasn't like the later books in the Greatcoat series where it moved on all over the world in one book. It focused you on one setting and then you left, and I think that that was a good decision for De Castell to make. And finally, I read Unsheltered by Barbara Kingsolver, and I do plan on doing a full review of this book. But I think that it needs to be said that I didn't enjoy it. I feel as though the writer tried to cram a lot in, and she wanted to talk about a lot, which is what she does often, and she talks about issues really well in the other books that I've read of hers, but she will use an entire 500-page tome to actually talk about that one issue, and here she's trying to fit about 4 or 5 in there, and they all become mashed together, they become a jumble. She has a lot to say about the world at the moment and the world of the past, and how they're kind of linking together, which we know things are harkening back to a period in history where people weren't at their most fortunate unless they were male and white. And I know what Kingsolver was trying to get at in this book, but she didn't execute it well enough. But I will go into more depth in my review. And them's the books. We're finally through the physical fiction books that I've read. I do still have a video to record about poetry, which I may get to today. The camera's nearly close to dying, though. I've been recording for over an hour now. But yes, if you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.